Okay, welcome back. So this lecture is going to cover the student resources section of the PPE manual. So I'm going to dive right in here to on-site placement instructions. As I mentioned, I think in one of my earlier lectures, the on-site placement instructions really is just for all PPEs at this point, not necessarily specific to just those of you going physically on site. I would say that this is for both virtual and on-site PPEs, okay? Um, like I said, Eric and I are still working on updating this website to be up to date with our current language that we're using around PPEs. And so anyways, I'll get started here. So you've heard me mention the final PPE report, okay? So I'm just going to say right now that the final PPE report is something that comes from your experiences while you are at the PPE site, but it is not due until HIM 4556, which is the seminar course, okay? So for all of you taking your PPEs in the fall, you will have your uh, seminar course in spring 1 of 2023. Okay, so this report will be due at that time. So you're going to go out on your PPEs in November, and then when you're done, the class is essentially done. Once you're done with your PPE, the PPE course is done. But then you're going to have, Christmas break and winter break, and then you'll start the seminar course in the spring, and this report will be due usually the third or fourth week of class. Okay. So just so you know that you do have a little bit of time after your PPE ends to complete this report, but I'm not going to specifically give you time during the seminar course to complete this. It's just going to be my expectation that you're working on it all along and that you'll turn it in at its due date. Okay. um, the report needs to have 5 sections, and I'll explain what that means. There's 6 listed here, but I only want 5 of them. Let's see. What else do I want to say about this at this time? Because I'm gonna do a whole lecture on the final PPE report. And so I don't want to give you too much information right now, but I also don't want it to intimidate you either, okay? So the required sections are there's one on the PPE project. So basically you're going to give a summary of your project that you complete while you're on the PPE. Then there's going to be 5 content area essays. Again, I'll explain a lot more about these later, but they're essentially 5 essays that are 2 to 3 pages long, double-spaced, on some areas that you have found interesting while you were at your PPE. The next section is listed as workflow analysis. And so where that whole like 5 or 6 sections come into place, this is where it is. So with a virtual PPE, sometimes it's really difficult for students to complete a workflow analysis. And so if it's like pretty much impossible to complete a workflow analysis, I will have you complete an exploration, okay, which is basically interviewing somebody working in a more non-traditional role, and you're going to conduct an interview with them and then write a short essay, okay? So 3 and 5 are kind of interchangeable on this list, okay? But then the other required section is this management and leadership principles. This is where you will conduct a management interview where you will seek out to determine the manager's leadership style, and then you'll write an essay about that. You'll do a organizational chart for the department that they oversee, and then you'll also assess which management functions they perform in their role. Okay, and the last section that everybody must do is the PPE reflection paper. So this is more of an in-depth reflection on your PPE experience. Okay, all right, so that's all I'm going to say for now on the final PPE report. So I also mentioned in a previous lecture about the student evaluation of the PPE experience. This is also an electronic evaluation that will be emailed to you. It's basically a student satisfaction survey on your PPE experience. So that'll come to you probably like Monday or Tuesday of your second week of your PPE, okay, via email. While you're on your PPE, I'm going to ask that you journal about your experience. I'll be looking for 4 journal entries total, and these you will enter into the discussion forum in the HIM 4555 discussion forum within Brightspace. Okay, so this is a way for your classmates to also see how you're doing and what you're up to and the interesting things that you're experiencing. Okay, don't let these intimidate you either. They're just a couple paragraphs, and there's only 4 of them. So 2 a week, or however you want to divide it up, it's up to you. So, um, and then I'm not going to go over this again, but this is just where you will, or where your mentor will complete an evaluation on you. Next, just some other kind of general information and instructions. This is where I have information for you on the expectation to send an email to your PPE site mentor 1 to 2 weeks prior to the start of your PPE. So Eric and I will send you the email address of your site mentor, and then from there, you will send an email to them. Okay. And so I'm looking for you to introduce yourself. I want you to confirm the PPE site address, because if you're going on site, some of these organizations are very large and there's maybe very specific locations that they want you to, a location that they want you to meet them at. Okay. Identify an arrival time and meeting place on the first day of your PPE. Inquiring about who to contact should an emergency arise. We have had students get flat tires, get lost, different things, traffic, you just never know, right? And if you're in Minnesota in November, the weather can be kind of unpredictable. So it's always nice to just get a phone number of somebody that you can contact if there is an emergency, right? And so a lot of times our mentors are giving you their personal cell phone numbers. So that's nice too. But just to have as a way to get a hold of them if you do end up running late, okay? And then you can inquire about any project preparatory work that you can complete in advance of your arrival on site. And obviously, if you are a virtual PPE student, this is going to look a little bit differently. And instead of confirming the PPE site address, you're confirming how to connect with them on the first day, right? Via Zoom or Teams or whatever they're using, what time you need to be there, all of those things. Okay. So I'm just looking for you to modify these. The other thing is it is still good to get a contact number in case an emergency arises, such as you lose internet connection or something like that happens, or maybe you get sick or whatever the case may be. So it's still a good idea to address these things, right? Some of the other things to maybe consider in that email include, if you're working on site is if you are going to have a dedicated workspace and while you're there, and if they're going to provide you with a computer or laptop, or if you should bring your own. A lot of times students like to bring their own anyways, just to take notes on, or, whatever you prefer. But something to consider and something to ask about. Any dress code considerations. Sometimes organizations, I find that if there are considerations, it's oftentimes that they're more relaxed and way more casual, and they want the student to know that. We have one organization in Duluth where jeans are acceptable and encouraged to be worn every day. And so just some things like that. Otherwise, we say dress casual. So um, lunch, if you have questions about lunch, if you should bring a lunch or if there's a cafeteria there, whatever those types of questions might be, right? Okay, so then we want you to obviously report to your affiliation site at the agreed upon time. Obviously, we want you to be on time, and you'll be putting in an 8-hour day and 40 hours per week during a traditional PPE. And so you need to plan for that, right? I would like you after your first day, or sorry, on your first day, to send me a text message or an email just letting me know that you made it, that you got logged in, that you're connected, all of those things. Like I'm just always you guys are like my children and I want to know that you made it and that um you're settled in for your first day and things are going well. So just simple email or text message. If you send me a text, make sure you tell me who you are and just say, I made it, I'm settled in, and things are going good. Okay. So super short and sweet, just to let me know. And this is my personal cell phone number. And feel free to add me as a contact right now if you want. I have students texting me all the time, even if you have just a quick question. Okay. Don't hesitate. All right, let's see here what's next. So, so while you're at your PPE, you're directly responsible to the PPE site mentor, and you're of course asked to abide by the protocols of the site concerning break periods, parking, etc., as well as abiding by all departmental and hospital policies and regulations governing employees. And they should discuss these with you during your orientation, and so be sure to acquaint yourself with them, okay? Any problems or concerns that may arise should be brought to my attention, okay? But I would like you to first discuss them with your site mentor, okay? Um, when you call me saying you have a problem or you have a problem with your site mentor, I'm going to ask you what you've already done about it, okay? The one thing to remember is to remain professional at all times, um, to remember the Benedictine values, to live them while you're on the PPE, and always just be respectful and as professional as possible. Sharing your concerns with them um, from that place will go a lot farther, right? Than if you don't. And so try to handle any situations that arise with them first, and then you can bring them to me if there are um, things that maybe are unresolved or things aren't going right. Now, say that you get there. Um, I am just thinking of different scenarios students have had. One time we had a student arrive on site. They spent their first day with the mentor, and it was very obvious. It was a new person that we had never sent a student to before, and it was very obvious that they had not prepared. They really weren't. Um, um, I don't even know if they really knew what the student was even going to be doing there while they were there. So there was no schedule, there was no project. The student was just kind of like in limbo and alone most of the day, and she knew that that wasn't right, right? That wasn't the way things were supposed to go. And so if that happens to you, please call me immediately. Call me on my cell phone, and let's talk about it, because we want to get you out of there as soon as possible, or I need to rectify the situation and talk with the mentor to see if we can salvage it. Okay. All right. We want you to wear your student identification badge at all times. So if you get one, please wear it. You will be expected to obviously maintain professional behavior while you're on your PPE. Um, I hate going over this stuff because I feel like it's very obvious, but the things considered unprofessional, um, use of alcoholic beverages or intoxication, possession or use of a controlled substance, voicing unsolicited critical comments about the facility, health information department, or personnel. I will get into this a little bit more in my etiquette lecture, but avoiding office gossip is very important, and you need to just remove yourself from those situations and not get involved, right? You also should not share your opinions and thoughts unless you're asked, right? Nobody wants an arrogant student um, telling them what to do, right? So let's be respectful and keep your thoughts to yourself unless you're asked what you think, okay? Obviously, verbal or physical assault on facility employee, visitor, or patient, knowledgeable and purposeful violation of a facility or department rule or regulation, violation of the confidentiality of patient information, violation of the confidentiality of management discussions or employee discussions. Yes, I will just say here that make sure that you do not share anything that you hear or see at the organization with anybody outside of the organization. Some of you may be working or going to organizations in very small communities, and as you know, word can spread very fast. And so You need to maintain the confidentiality of everything that you hear. You also, if a manager or your site mentor discusses a personnel issue with you, um, that is a really honestly privileged experience for you as somebody that is graduating from our program and could move into a leadership role at some point. Um, Having that experience is wonderful, honestly, that they would share that with you and how they've handled the situation because you're going to be able to learn so much from that. And you can take that with you. But also, it's kind of sacred. You know, you don't want to talk about it with anybody else because maybe you know that employee or you know somebody that knows that employee. Just again, keep all of that information and those things confidential. The other thing is if you are given copies of documents during meetings and you take them with you, make sure that you ask the mentor if it's okay that you take them with you, okay? Or turn them back in if it's something that you don't think you need. But always ask, okay? And then lastly, violation of professional behavior could result in the immediate termination of the PPE and or subsequent failing grade for the course. Okay. We want you to make every effort to refrain from being absent, and if you have to be absent, make sure you inform the site mentor prior to your expected arrival time. Also check with your site mentor to see if you can make up the time. Again, refer to that student absences policy. Okay. If you require a medical attention, please inform your site mentor and request assistance in locating an appropriate physician if necessary. So if you're on site and you're feeling ill and you need to see a doctor, please talk with your site mentor about that, okay? You, of course, are responsible for payment of any bills rendered for medical services provided to you, and you must have health insurance coverage in effect during this time and carry an appropriate identification card to present at the time you register for medical services. That's definitely something the college does not cover. So um, also, keep in mind throughout your experience that you will be sharing your experience with your classmates during the seminar course. Each of you will give a presentation during the seminar course about your experience. And so um, make sure that, you know, any experiences that are unique to your site and that may not be available to other students in some way, those are especially important to share. And I hope that you make notes of things. And so just something to keep in mind, okay? You may be traveling to other sites in the area for tours. So again, if some of these organizations are very large, they may send you to different locations. And so those meetings will be arranged for you, but it is your responsibility to get to that place at the appointed time, unless, you know, you're going with your supervisor or site mentor or another employee. Okay. I mentioned this also in a previous lecture, but please keep a copy of that health screening with you so that you can present that upon request, okay? We do have a copy of it. If you get into a pinch, right, you can always call Eric and get that, but make sure, you know, if you are on site, just make a quick copy of it and stick it in a folder and bring it with you, okay? Background checks, again, here, we just want to really acknowledge that these are important and that you need to get them done before your PPE can begin. Okay. All right. So next we're going on to this virtual placement expectations. So I think, as I mentioned earlier in one of my other lectures, some of these sections are, you know, changing a little bit. This is not changed at all. These are our expectations for anybody conducting a virtual PPE. Um, even if you're an on-site PPE, but maybe you're home for a day and you're attending meetings virtually and things, these are our expectations for you, okay? So first of all, we want you to always live out the Benedictine values of respect, community, hospitality, stewardship, and love of learning. Be respectful while engaging in online discussions. We want you to prepare and maintain a secure workspace for your PPE hours, being mindful of privacy and security. Okay, we need you to consider the visibility of your background and audio. You need to be in a secure location where nobody's going to be able to walk behind your screen. Okay, so in an office, in a bedroom, in a secure place. Okay, we also want to make sure that you use headphones if you can. This allows you to keep conversations more private. And so those in a room next to yours, if they, so they can't hear what's going on. So headphones are pretty inexpensive to get. And so I would encourage you all, if you're doing a virtual PPE, to please invest in some. Okay. And secure workspace means that it is not accessible to others. It's important to ensure that others are not walking past your computer screen. Ensure that you are maintaining the confidentiality, privacy, and security of the information you are working with and the conversations you are having at all times. I'm just going to give you a quick example of something that happened last fall. So last fall, we had a student that thought that they could work in their living room at their coffee table during the day while their children were home. Okay. This is not acceptable. The site mentor was very upset about this because it was obvious that he was in meetings with professionals at the organization. The kids were yelling in the background. Um, when he was called on, he was distracted. Um, and it was obvious that, he did not have a headset on. And so the information that they were discussing during the meeting was not to be shared or with a wider audience, right? Anybody outside the organization. And so um, that was very uncomfortable to deal with. And I would just ask that you all please be very aware of that and not do that. Please be in a secure office where nobody else can have access. Also make accommodations for your children to be in daycare and to be supervised, so you don't have to do that while you're expected to be in your PPE. Okay. During your introductory email, maybe ask the site mentor if there are any specific technology needs that you should be aware of so that you can be ready to start on your first day. Stay logged on to your computer and attentive during your scheduled PPE hours. Even if you have free time to work on your project or other PPE tasks, you may be invited to meetings with short notice, and we want you to make every effort to attend those. So don't leave the house for 3 hours during your PPE day, and in the event that your mentor has a meeting pop up that they want you to attend. You need to be accessible, okay? Be on time, whether you're joining remotely or in person, on-time attendance is crucial, okay? And if anything, be early. um, Close any unneeded applications on your computer to keep the video optimally functioning. We want you to avoid multitasking on social media or other websites during meetings. There's nothing more uncomfortable than getting called on and not having been paying attention, okay? We want you to be attentive at all times, and we want you to stay alert. And so if you have dual monitors, please close down anything else that you have going on and put your phones away, mute them or shut them off, okay? Just as you would if you were in the workplace. And so if you need a copy of a document, we also ask you please ask the person you're working with if they can share a copy. Do not assume that you'll be able to have access, and do not gather images with screen captures. This may be a breach of confidentiality. Like I said before, always ask, okay? For one-on-one meetings, make sure your video is turned on. And for larger meetings, you may want to check with your mentor for guidance, okay? Some organizations just don't use video, and that is fine. If nobody's using video and you're the only one, feel free to shut yours off. However, um, if they do use video, we expect you to have yours on, okay? Um, and then we want you to keep your audio muted unless you're prepared to talk. This just kind of cuts down on distractions and different things for the other people attending the meeting as well, okay? Always dress professionally. This means pants too. You never know when you might have to stand up on camera, right? Um, when you are speaking, let others know that you are finished by saying one of these sign-offs. That's all, I'm done, or thank you, so that everyone knows you have finished your comments. And then lastly, remember to sign out or leave the meeting when the session is finished. You never know if somebody is going to reuse a Zoom meeting link for something else, and you don't want to be caught off guard attending a meeting that you weren't invited to. Okay. All right, so I think that's enough for this one. I think the only thing I have left are the content areas and interview questions and the final PPE report. So I will leave those for my final lecture, and I'll see you then.